No, National High School Open. In the grand final, we will have WSDC. Clothing government, Alor Akar and finally, competition, WSDC, WB. Before we start the finals, just a reminder for everyone, please silence your phones or switch off your phones. If you would like to leave the room or the lecture theater, please do so in between speeches. Try not to do it when you deliver. You don't want to distract. Without further ado, on the motion that this House would ban ministry recruitment campaigns directed towards low-income groups, I call upon the Prime Minister to deliver.
In a world where the government constantly targets the people who are the most vulnerable in society, when the government uses people as cannon fodder, that is not a world that we want to live in, and that is a world where we want to change. Firstly, I'm going to characterize low-income groups. The low-income groups of people that we're talking about in today's debate are the people who have been systematically oppressed, the people who have been discriminated for years by the greedy, capitalist, racist government and racist society that they live in. These are the African Americans who lost generations of family, who lost generations of wealth to this greedy, capitalist, racist government and racist society. These are the poor people who live in terrible conditions because your capitalist system made houses, made food, made education too expensive and inaccessible to these people, to afford by these people, and who cannot escape. And these are people who cannot escape poverty because the government just does not care about them. It's these people who need to be helped the most when they are the ones who are being pushed to join an army and die for a country that does not care about them. Secondly, I'm going to characterize wars. The wars that we're talking about in today's debate are the wars that are made and decided and opted into by the rich capitalist government, by the rich capitalist majority of these countries that we're talking about. And these wars are decided by them only to serve them, only to serve the rich white capitalists that don't care about black people. These are wars like the Iraq War by Bush to get oil from the Middle East. These are wars like the Vietnam War that killed so many black people, so many black boys, and it started the Black Panther movement. And we say that even if you win these wars, it is often the soldiers who return home, which are barely any of them, that are still unemployed. We lose lives and we will never be returned to these communities. I have one major point for you today: the incentive of creating more wars. Before I start closing.
What about existing officers who joined the military in the past because they poor, who knew were poor? Will you now discharge these individuals and ban them from entering the future?
No, because what we're talking about today is banning recruitment targeted towards low-income groups. If in the past, without these like advertisement recruitment campaigns targeted towards them, without those they opted into it, then whatever. That is not the government pushing them to do it. That is them opting into it on their own accord. And we're like, that's not exactly what we're talking about. So my main point is the incentive of creating more wars. Under a few levels of analysis, let's take this one by one. Firstly, it is often the people who are underprivileged in society who want to. And the people who are underprivileged in society, they are often still in that situation of being underprivileged because the society doesn't care. We think that these are the people we need to defend in today's debate. Side opposition is going to be neglecting the individuals who need the most help. All people living under the poverty line, instead of giving them concrete jobs, what side opposition is fighting for is sending them to a war. Sending them to a war that will not keep them alive for very long, sending them to a war where they are expected to die, and that even if they do come back, they're still poor. What this means is that you're taking away breadwinners from the families of these people in the low-income group. Because who are you going to recruit when you draft people for war? You're going to recruit the able-bodied men and women who are to do labor, to do work, and in this case, it's killing people that they have never been offended by. So you're taking away the breadwinners from these minorities, which means that once all your black soldiers have died, once a lot of them have died, that means these minority groups back home have less people in their family, less people to work, less people who are able to work and provide money for this family, which means you are furthermore decreasing their purchasing power, decreasing their social mobility, which is something absolutely bad. And they're more economically deprived. And even if they do come back, even if these people do come back, they have lost years of their life that could have been spent learning vocational skills, years of their life that could have been earning money for education, years of their life taken away from them, and they are forced to go back to the soup kitchens at the end of the day, even after they have saved their country. Before I go on,
So are you still okay with poor people opting in as military officers, as long as you advise this campaign to step?
No, obviously we're supporting the motion, and the motion directly goes against that. So now, the society will be worse off. On the second level of analysis, society will be worse off at the end of the day. This is because you're giving society a legitimate northern minority. This is already being so prevalent. If you were to allow recruitment campaigns targeted to low-income individuals, that means you're legitimizing the view in society that they don't need to care about these individuals. Because you're giving them a legit reason to ignore them. No, because once society thinks these people are just cannon fodder, these people are people who can put in front of the cannons to save ourselves, that means we no longer need to prioritize jobs for them. We no longer need to push our politicians to get rid of ghetto areas, to help people escape poverty. That is no longer an issue in the minds of anyone who before might have been. And even people who might have a different, they are swayed towards believing that we should just ignore these poor people, because now the view within them is reaffirmed that these people cannot do these high education jobs. That these people do not deserve a chance at these high education jobs, which is very bad. And also, this means that society becomes less aware. These minority societies become less aware of their point, because when the great majority of soldiers come home uneducated, and without skills, that means they are less able to defend their rights, and they are less aware of their rights. They're less able to defend them because now they're not important people in society. They don't have any education. On society doesn't depend on them. So who's going to listen to them once they start complaining of their underprivileged lives as cannon fodder? Nobody. And that is not something we agree with. And they're less aware of their rights because throughout their entire lives, they have seen their fathers, they have seen their mothers being persuaded by the government that if you stay with the country with your efforts, that you will be rewarded, but they have been lied to. And even if maybe 1 or 2 people out of 100,000 come home as war heroes, you're still allowing people to use that rhetoric to justify complacency with taking away their rights. Because for every single one black man who comes home a war hero, there are 100,000 who are kept in the poverty line because nobody cares about them. That is not something we agree with. Lastly, within the last 15 seconds, we incentivize more wars. Because once these rich white people who are in the government don't care about black people can just send these black people to wars, don't need to send anyone in their own group, anyone they care about these wars. You're telling them it's fine, go to war. Nobody you care about will get hurt. That is not something we agree with. That is something we think that is terrible coming from side opposition. So alongside governments, that black people should be allowed their rights. Black people should be treated as human beings, not cannon fodder.
Thank you very much for that speech. I call a motion to
It was smart for them to tell us 2 things. Firstly, that education and etc. is inaccessible to poor individuals, poor black individuals in ghetto areas, because it's expensive. Therefore, poor people cannot necessarily access these sorts of benefits already. Secondly, here's what opening opposition is going to bring to the people. These are individuals who prioritize short-term benefits, which means education, a long-term benefit, is not a priority towards them, because they are made something that they do not have in status quo already. Which means, even if you give them free education, these are not people who will be incentivized to opt into education because they don't have basic necessities in their houses, in their tables already. Which means, the very idea of you giving them a job, even if it's lesser, or even if the wages are lower, it's still a form of occupation that allows them to opt out from the cycle of poverty. Secondly, even if veterans come back unemployed, we give them employment. Now we allow you to be strategists for the military, etc. This is not a problem. 2 arguments I'm going to individuals. 2 levels. Firstly, I'm going to characterize whether coercion actually exists, or secondly, if coercion exists, how it's better, and if it's your happiness that you want to fight for. Secondly, we allow individuals to opt out from the poverty cycle, but before that, several rebuttals. Firstly, we have noticed that we will incentivize more wars. We think wars will happen nonetheless, but these wars America participates in, the question is whether it's necessary or not, whether it's a necessity or not. We think the answer is yes, especially if you look into the context of the US intervening in Iraq, when it's a super clean intervention. That intervention is necessary to ensure that the dictatorship in Iraq was abolished at that time, and human rights abuse was mitigated at that time. These sorts of war is extremely crucial, and it's extremely necessary to begin with, right? But secondly, if you don't want wars, then you will abolish the whole military. It doesn't matter if your poor income people will be recruited or not. Your whole military will not exist to begin with, right? But secondly, on soldiers being unemployed, right? We think, firstly, right, these are poor people who don't have a say in society already due to the extreme lobbying power of the rich. If you still continue to allow them to be poor, these are people who are the system because they don't have political attraction, they don't have political say. But as American individuals who are so patriotic, these are individuals you look up to. These are individuals in which fought for your country, in which you can relate using the patriotic sentiment, right? Which means even if after they come back and they are unemployed, as an American individual who's so patriotic, I'm more likely to be incentivized to fight for a veteran in the war who has fought for my country as opposed to a poor person I've never ever heard before. This is an occupation that grants you identity. This is an occupation that gives you a benefit. First argument, how do you provide, how is this a basic autonomy and basic right for us individuals, right? Two levels. Firstly, even we are, like, coercion exists every day, right? Especially when we buy clothes, we are always coerced to follow trends and etc. But first level, are individuals able to say no to this? We say yes. Why do we say so? This is not an occupation that just gives you money and gives you short-term benefits. This is an occupation that recruits you to foreign land that you may potentially lose your life there. Which means this is the very check and balance that allows individuals to rationalize their choices to begin with. Two reasons. Firstly, when you have to fill up forms that say that, look, the government will not be responsible if you lose your life because this is an operation that you voluntarily opt in. This is already a check and balance to allow you to rationalize your choice to begin with. But secondly, those sorts of fitness trainings that the government carries out, it simulates the war zone conditions, especially when people are dying in front of your eyes, and those conditions are actually being simulated right in front of your eyes. This is a very check and balance that allows individuals to rationalize their choice, which means even if I am interested in getting those sorts of benefits that might be short-term to me, the very idea that I may lose my life in this occupation is already a mitigating factor that allows me to rationalize my choice. Which means even if coercion exists, we think individuals are able to say no towards it. Secondly, even if individuals opt into it, we think it's extremely beneficial towards them, especially when that particular person is interested in becoming a soldier to begin with. The government has no say to implement a blanket policy that just generalizes every individual, saying that you don't have the right to choose what sort of occupation you want to become in your life. If you want to become a soldier, and it is your interest as a poor individual, that's a choice we respect, because you have the autonomy to decide what sort of life tracks you want to go to, and determines whether your life is happy and you are satisfied with your life or not. We will be the side to tell you that you have a basic autonomy to choose what sort of life track you have, even if you are poor. This is a side, this is an occupation. We allow you to opt out from your sphere of poverty. Before I move on to my second level opening.
So, you literally say, you would rather sell the life of a black man for maybe 1 month of salary for his family and sentence them to starvation for the rest of their lives, rather than letting that black man stay in his home and work for a better life in the rest of his life.
Here's my second argument, right? Why are poor people unable to opt out from poverty? The characterization and the situation in status quo was vague when it came from opening up. Let me analyze that for you. In ghetto areas, number one, education is expensive, especially when we analyze private schools and international schools. Secondly, even if you have free education, these are poor people who don't even have food and water on their tables, which means these are people who are forced to help their families to ensure that they have food in their stomachs to digest every single day. They do not have time for education, they do not have time for socials, right? Especially when we analyze ghetto areas, that is the main reason why people join gangs to begin with, because they get all these sorts of benefits from gangs. These are not people who are going to opt into the education system because they cannot do so. The very idea of you giving them an occupation to begin with, even if it grants you just a small amount of salary, is still enough to provide towards your family and as a whole, right? But secondly, how do we allow to fight for poor people rights even more? When we analyze the situation in status quo, poor people do not have an identity. They are not even acknowledged by the vast majority of society. If you as a patriotic American want to acknowledge what your military has done for you, then you would more likely vote for a veteran as opposed to a poor person which you have never heard of. Which means if these are people who came from a poor background, these are people who will have that political background after coming back from wars to propagate ideas to help poor people in ghetto areas. We allow you to have a background, we allow you to have a better political image in order for you to rally for more benefits in poor people in status quo. For these two reasons, I'm extremely proud to oppose.
much for that speech. I call upon the next speaker, the Deputy Prime Minister, to deliver a speech.
Test. Hello. Hello.
Trying to pass the mic across.
Yeah. You tempt young black boys the luxury that you denied them. Money. We will not allow the single most hurt minority to be the object of manipulation, to be the object of your unjustified white wars. We make society aware of them. You allow society to dispose of them. Before I move into my arguments, there are so many responses to them, and if you support them, be ashamed of yourself. The first thing, that people don't care about occupations, they care more about food. Well, here's why. Because they've never had an access to this occupation, they've never had access to this education. You only make it more likely for them to throw all of these things away when you give them into war. To opt into the education that provide them when they know they might make money by going to the evacuation. But most likely they will die and not come back at all. But we think that you give society less of a reason to provide them all these things that they deny, such as money, such as food, when they know that these are the individuals most disposable in our society. Because if you want to satisfy them, give them a job in the army. Let them die. Let them be the object of us wanting to get more money by stealing or not justified at all. And still, if we have been out gang violence involves your white people, so they know that because of them, we have more individuals opting into crime. So what about winning the wars? We are fine with wars being won or wars being lost. We are not fine with our young black boys being the individuals who are sacrificed during these wars. We are not fine with your detached, white, rich saying that the individuals, the reason why this war should go on is my boys aren't dying. We think that's more unjust war. Because if you agree that society is racist, then society will only react when they see their white boys dying. Society will only react when they see their white boys stepping on a landmine. But they will never see that. Because it will always be a black man who will not be reported upon. It will always be a black man who will be forgotten. What about war heroes? No, thank you. Here's what we said from PM himself. Even if you have one war hero that thousands of others get neglected, but we think you allow the government to use these war heroes as examples as to why more young black boys opt into the war, not why young black boys go for an education. You allow government to justify the fact that we don't give you an education because of these war heroes. So good job there, being an idiot. Oh, sorry. We want our boys to stay at home and make a living. The comparative is at least they get to live a life. If they go to war, they're most likely going to get shot. They're likely going to get captured and tortured. They're likely going to have the worst times ever. At least here, when they're surrounded by family, at least here, when there is some opportunity to break out of that situation, they can opt into those things. But what about people not caring? Here's the comparative. People in your side will never care because now you don't ever give them a reason to care. So now they don't have to see these ghettos anymore because all your black individuals are dying. We think that if they never care anyways, we should at least let our black boys die for them. We don't want to die for an individual who doesn't give a about us. But no, thank you. What about rationality? Look, he just said that this black boy is going to take this job, is going to take food over education. So obviously he's not going to rationalize the contract that he's making with the government when he's opting into becoming a soldier. Instead, what you're saying is conceding in your speech a young black boy who you denied access to all these other things. Therefore, he's going to be irrational and choose this simply because he did not have an exposure to a different kind of life. And that's why your black boys won't be happy because they never got an exposure to a different kind of happiness in your life, an exposure to an education, an exposure to a society that was conducive for them. Instead, their irrational decision is the reason why they'll be forced to be the object of a permanent harm, dying. And when that happens, they won't have an access to any happiness on your side. No, thank you. But finally, this weird thing from closing, which is definitely going to be the extension. What about people who opted in before? Here's the scale. You make it much more worse when you have vigorous advertisements focused on this one area. So even if there was one black person before, now there'll be so many other black individuals who opted in solely because of these advertisements. But principally, are we against it? Sure. So, any viewers? What kind of life do you want these individuals to live when these are the very people who starve when they go for education simply because they don't have the income to buy the most basic necessities?
So we don't want them to live a life where they're fighting a war for the very individuals who starve them, for the very individuals who take away their rights. They'll go to your war and they may come home, but even when they do come home, if your society is still racist, your society still doesn't care, they'll go right back into that system which you say is so terrible. So my main argument on why this is an illegitimate manipulation of consent of the minority. We can just the frame that you have neglected. These are individuals who had less exposure to education, but most importantly, money. So they're making extremely ill-informed decisions, and you're only contributing to this by tempting them with the thing that they want the most, money. They will never be able to say no on your side, because if you say that the very thing that they die for is food, the very thing they die for is, I don't know, plates that look really fancy, then you're always going to want to choose your money, and you will never be able to make another choice. So they cannot say no. And here are the harms to this. We think that this is also engaging directly with what he said, that people should be able to choose happiness. One, you never allow these people access to a greater happiness. Because now when they make decisions that are irrational, when they cannot say no to these things, I mean, they could never opt into things that could actually make them happy. So even these black boys stayed home, at least maybe they could play basketball more that made them happy. Maybe they could hang out with their friends that made them happy. But you're sending them to a war where they'll be directed by a white army of officials, go into these black guys that I don't even know about, and then die. So we think on a scale, they're not really opting in because of happiness, they're opting in because of desperation. And that's when you're going to make these people suffer even more in these wars. But the most important thing with the harm to your consent is you're forcing these people to kill themselves. Because if they could not say no, then they could not object to entering these armies. And the reason why you made it so pervasive, why you made it so perversive, I don't know what the word is, but you're perverts, is because you bring your advertisements that say, join the war, you'll be a war hero, everyone will love you, you'll be shit rich when you come home. These are the advertisements that manipulate these people into believing that the army is a good thing, when in reality, the army is the worst thing ever because you sleep in the mud, I don't know, you sleep in a crocodile, you sleep in the enemy base, whatever they want you to do. It's the worst thing in the world. But the reason why you're manipulating them is you make it seem so beautiful, the idea of joining the army, when they never had access to an education, when they never had access to a job. If we kept them back here, if we made society aware of all the gang violence, of all the people in these ghettos, we think society would have a greater incentive to not manipulate our black boys, but to save them.
Thank you very much for that speech. I call on the next speaker to deliver a speech here.
Yeah, can you hear me? If the entire government branch can come up here and tell you that the ability for you to love your country and the need for you to want to fight for your country, that's the only way for you to gain the happiness and to feel the void in your heart, is the patriotic feeling that you have in your soul, can only be determined if you are a rich person, because that's when you can make a rational decision. That is when you can make a rational choice when you want happiness to exist in your life. You antagonize the people who don't understand how you get in any way. Right? How can I tell you several things? Completely ignored by Siddhartha. The idea of happiness is something we always prioritize. That's why governments never take full control of money that individuals make in society, even if they can make a better choice for you. Because the right to a bodily autonomy is something we prioritize. But secondly, the idea that even if in the best case scenario, you can guarantee you living better choice in your lifestyle, that does not mean you are more happier with the life that you live. The happiness that you can achieve with the life that you live is knowing that you can have a choice, to know that you have to control over what life you want to live, how you want to spend your money, how you want to live every day of your life, is the happiness we give towards individuals. Number one, we incentivize wars to exist. 5 levels of analysis why this is completely false when you say this book. Number one, wars are inevitable, but also because I mean that's logical, right? Because wars are inevitable, that's why it's happening in society. But secondly, we also think that it's also against your state reasoning, and also not logical for you to only want to waste your people and send them off to die. Number one, the ability for you to protect your country is how many soldiers that you have, therefore you wouldn't suddenly just send them off and assume that you want to die, because that is your national security. That is the ability for you to fight for your nation. And protect the people on the run is the ability for you to have a major, have a large army, and a lot of people joining it. So we don't think there's a logical assumption they can say we will automatically send to this fight of anything. But number three, use procedures before you enter war. Meaning we don't suddenly push the red button and say, oh, let's go to war. It is so many journals with so many argumentations, so many levels of analysis before you actually want to enter war, because you understand that it's a major issue, not something you can play with, not something that can happen in a day or two. It takes lots and lots of planning. That's why you have generals. That's why you have so many structural positionings between individuals, because you take it very seriously and you want to win the war. What level of analysis? If he wants to tell you they want to protect the African American man in our society because he's being stripped of his rights, yet you don't want to protect the African American man that lives in another country because he's not a part of your nation. That man is probably been stripped of his humanitarian rights. That's why we want to enter war. That man has probably gone through worse than them being low income. The fact that the man cannot live is the reason why you guys also want to enter wars. You also don't think in the best case scenario you can tell us that these are only people and then they want to protect the lowest common denominator, but you don't protect the lowest common denominator, people in that country, because those people have no other alternative. Those people will suffer in the case of which US won't step in. And we didn't severe harm they propose those individuals. What were your seats? Last and not least, let's analyze this. Let's analyze what was that speech all about. Number one, people being that of itself. That if you have no money, if you have a stable job in this society, that is the determination of your happiness. Number one, we don't think so. There's a reason why states will control the amount of money for people under the poverty line, because they realize that as much as you can make better decisions for you, we respect that there's a line that needs to be drawn towards the bodily autonomy to give those individuals, just to an extent, and to a large extent, that bodily autonomy is the ability for you to live your life to the fullest extent. But even in the worst case scenario, over will bite the bullet and tell you, even in the worst case scenario, you assume that your side of the house, these individuals who will die at war, the idea that they made that choice on their own, and also realize that I probably won't want to fight for my nation, and you don't think that you can assume just because you're poor, you cannot access the amount of information and tell yourself whether or not you are willing to sacrifice your life for your country. Just because you are poor doesn't mean you cannot have the full rational calculus. This is not something you can just decide every day of your life. It's not just another job. It's them saying that are you ready to sacrifice your life for the nation that you love? Are you ready? And your parents and your sisters, your brothers asking you, are you ready to sacrifice your life for a country? Are you ready to die, or you can take away that life? When you all those questions, the multiple number of questions that people ask you, the minute you see what happens in wars and analyze that these people can probably die and you probably can get shot. We think those are analyses that you can access. So even if you are poor, in a large extent, you believe that you can still access this form of information, and the ability for you to make that choice is something that will fight for. Go.
If you already agree that society is racist, in what world are they going to re-evaluate the wars that they're going into? When the people who are on the line are the white boys they care about, or the minority that they've neglected anyways all these years?
So under your side of the house, you're willing to say that people on the ground right now, you make it better for them. You under your side is also more likely that just because you take away another opt-out mechanism for these individuals, because you painted such a horrible image for these individuals. You painted that they don't have a life, you painted they have no education, you painted that they don't have a choice within life, because every day they suffer day by day. If this is an opt-out system, you take away another opt-out system for these individuals to achieve that better life that you want them to achieve. Under your side of the house, individuals even more. We take out the only one of the few opt-out mechanisms you can have under your side. Second level of analysis. It's nothing to come up here and tell you that the way that we fix this situation is giving them education. We don't think by all of a sudden more corporations suddenly more education companies also want to come in and hire poor individuals, because at the end of the day they wouldn't want to hire them under your side of the house because they have no incentive. Like they don't have incentive today. If that was the case scenario on your side, we don't think incentivize corporations to also enter. If anything, you just take away another platform for these individuals to get a better life. But secondly, and last and not least, all the benefits that you occur on your side won't exist. Because at the end of the day, you want to tell us that we want these individuals to be better, live a happier life at the end of the day, because that is what we want for these individuals. If at the end of the day, and the choice goes to individuals there, so sure, you want to join the army, then that's fine, have that form of choice given to you. But in the case of which you do want to join the army, and in the case of which you are being stripped of your right to join the army, we don't think it will be motivated in any way for you to increase your standard of living, because you think that the standard of living and the happiness in you can only be achieved by joining the army. You take away the incentive for individuals to also have their happy life, because you take away the incentive for them to also want the happy life that they want to have. Under our side of OO, we told you several things. Number one, we don't give the courtesy choice just because you are poor and you cannot access information. If anything, even in the worst case scenario, that is merely a mechanical form of fraud that we can give you. So sure, we can take away like colorful advertisements saying join the army. We can take away taxi phrases saying join the army. If anything, I think we still give them a choice. We take away the manipulation that you have under your son of the house. If anything, that's still a mechanical point of view only. We still need to give these people a form of choice. But number two, we also need the bullet. So under your son of the house, it's not that we cannot assume that just because you are poor, then you are, or just because you want to join the army doesn't mean that you want that form of money. If anything, we tell you that it's also that form of happiness you can find those individuals. If you strip away that form of individuals, right, because they are poor, we think you antagonize poor people even more. You stick with the right for them to make that choice. Last and not least, even in the worst case scenario, at least they were happy when making that choice. Even if they live shorter, at least they were happy in the short years that they live. We find for people to be able to have their body autonomy, to be happy with the life they want to live.
Here.
Thank you very much for that speech. To kick off the closing out the debate, I call upon the member of the
We don't really think that today's debate is about whether there's a government conspiracy to systematically eliminate blacks. We don't really think today's debate is about whether wars are necessary or not. Today's debate is primarily about choice and whether we black people or Hispanic people, which constitute the majority of the army, we're telling you whether the choices of these people are infringed or not by today's policy. And that's what CG is going to bring to the table, right? Before I move on to our substantives, a few points of clarification. Number one, people say you are perfectly fine with poor people opting into the military. What we are not fine with is ads specifically targeting poor people, asking them to join the military just because they're poor. Let's clear a picture, right? We're okay with ads saying that Uncle Sam needs you. Join the military, fight for your country. We're not okay with ads saying that. Imagine you not being able to put food on the table, but when you join the military, not only you get to put food on the table, you do not even have to pay for your shelter because you give you shelter. You don't have to give you food. You can send money back to your family. You come home a war hero. Everyone will accept you. Your current situation will get better. We are not okay with this type of happening. Opting in the military, right? No, thank you. Next, moving on to the main clash today's debate. Which choice exists under which paradigm? Because we completely understand what OG is here to talk about. Because all we need to talk about, we want to prevent state manipulation of these people. And we agree, we do not want the state to manipulate these people. But what's lacking from OG and what we're going to complete the job is the how exactly does the state manipulate these people. Because in all themselves, they consider the fact that these people only see short-term benefits. And frankly, it's not their fault. Because these people, in their condition, are compelled to only see the short-term benefits. And when you manipulate and exploit this trick of theirs, then they only see short-term benefits and therefore only offer them short-term solutions to their problems and asking them to opt in into these short-term solutions instead of educating them and having them a long-term solution. This is where systematic oppression happens, and this is where poor people's or these people's choices are infringed upon. Something that OO didn't talk about. Because they came up here and say, you know what, we respect the choice of these people to opt into the military. Sure, but are you really giving them choice? First speaker came and talked about, you know what, subtle coercion happens anyway. We're talking about advertisement, how to follow, how to buy clothes. Telling you it's a completely different magnitude of harm when you buy a lousy piece of clothing and when you enter the military and potentially lose your life. Right? No, thank you. We're telling you, you cannot talk to us about how people will be happy with this choice. We're telling you no. We're telling you that people are truly happy to enter the military. Don't need this kind of ads. We're telling you that people are truly want and truly patriotic enough to serve the country out with their own coalitions. Don't need this kind of ads that specifically target their income group, specifically target their income in order to persuade them to enter the military. We're telling you that if people are compelled to enter the military simply because they cannot put food on the table, simply because because they want to reduce the burden on their family, we're telling you this is not a happy choice they're making. This is not an informed choice they're making. And when it comes to opting out, seriously, you think you can opt out of the military? Number one, you're either taking your body back. Number two, you're either going to have all sorts of psychological and mental trauma that are going to expand on you later. And number three, more often than not, people who are in the military will re-enlist in the military because they know how hard it is for a veteran to find jobs in the status quo. And therefore, it's a view that this choice is not really giving you an opt-out mechanism, right? Before we move on to my sentence, is true.
Wait, so if you okay with people still joining military, people who join is still because of the immediate benefits that you get. So you also give some degree of manipulation.
We agree to the fact that people have a lot of reasons to enter the military, right? What we're not okay is the state manipulating the fact that they are poor and us persuading people to enter the military because they're poor. The difference is, number one, people make their own choice of entering the military to find jobs. Number two, under this paradigm, you're effectively asking the state to manipulate the fact that these people are poor and to join the military, even if they do not understand that even if the fact is they do not understand that there are other options out there. There are other options that offer both short-term and long-term solutions to their economic state, right? Moving on to our substantives. Number one, we're going to further characterize to you the harms of soldiers during the active service and when they come home as veterans. Because we have to understand, in fact, it's not that simple as going there and being blown up. Even if you don't get blown up, you will suffer all sorts of psychological and mental trauma. Seeing your best friend becoming a pile of flesh and meat right in front of your eyes is something you will not forget for the rest of your life. Seeing your best friend running ahead of you 1 second and losing his head the next is something you will not forget in your life. Seeing your CEO abandoning your entire squadron or ordering your squadron into a suicide charge in order to save others is not something you'll forget in your life. Even if you come home alive, those psychological and mental traumas, those scars will follow you for life. No, thank you. We're telling you that this is a choice of extremely different magnitude as something like buying clothes or something like buying advertised products. No, thank you. We're telling you that this choice of that magnitude should not have any form of subtle or overt coercion. No, thank you. Number two, we're telling you besides PTSD, right? Even if they come home relatively normal, we're telling you as veterans, they'll still get screwed over because that's a fact. No, thank you. Not only does black veterans get ignored, all veterans get ignored. We're talking about the Veterans Association in the United States. They are underfunded, they are corrupt, they do not have any form of organization. You not fight for veteran benefits at the end of the day. So sure, at some point of the moment, they have some say as veterans. But the fact is, in the United States of America, in this moment, people on the ground don't care about veterans. And when people on the ground don't care about veterans, even though they sacrifice money, time, and blood to fight for their country, when they come home, they still can't find jobs. Harm them emotionally, not only you harm them with the possibility of losing their life, not only you harm them mentally, you still deny them the opportunity to escape the poverty cycle when they come home because of veteran benefits not being paid in status quo. Number two, how about the family environment, right? Because you have to understand the fact that most poor people or these people who have low income groups, they have both working parents, right? Both of them are working, and now when you send one of them away, what happens to the remaining family? The child has to grow up without a father, or a father who's mentally unstable because of the ordeal he went through. The child has to grow up with a father who will suddenly die behind the sofa when he hears machine guns going on television. How is this a stable environment for a child to grow up in? We're telling you that you're not only harming the individuals that join the military themselves, you're harming the family members on all sorts of levels, and for those reasons, I've never been part of the post.
Thank you very much for the speech. I call upon the first member of the closing opposition to
Yes. We find it highly contradictory for closing government to tell us that people can still join army under their of the house. But if people join, their families will suffer. They will suffer from psychological trauma, they will suffer from physical harm. It means we ask actually we are saying some people suffering are okay, but more people suffer are not okay. But including opposition, we will draw you two decisions. Number one, why the state cannot be materialistic in deciding the meaning of life of individuals. Second, why people privatization is completely arbitrary. That's why we should allow them to make chaos of their life of their own. Before that, I have one clarification. This debate operates that in a system where other alternatives have already failed, people don't join military for fun. In Malaysia, the starting salary of military is the highest compared to other salary. The retirement benefit that you get is the highest compared to other jobs. And your family will get compensation for all the rest of life if you like it better. So that's why there are myriad of reasons why people join military, and these benefits cannot exist in other forms. For example, like education, those kind of things, right? So people actually opt in to be military in the first place. It's not, if being a janitor or being a clerk is more beneficial, then no one would want to opt in to the military in the first place. But because of these benefits, that's why they opt in. And then secondly, what do I know education from opening government? Because the education is already failing in the system. The system has lied to them when they just make you climb the social ladder. You cannot depend on the system anymore. You cannot depend on the state when the state is complicit in making you suffer. Sit down. So I have like three rebuttals. Number one, they say incentive to create more wars. This debate is not about to create more wars, right? Wars can be good or can be bad, and that's not the issue. And we can do that. People don't really just send random people to go to war. Why? Because of the consequences that they will face. For example, in Koga issue, after they see like a soldier being tortured, then anti-war sentiment expound in US, right? It means people don't send people to war for that random reason. After Iraq war, US suffered from economic fatigue and war fatigue that makes them don't want to go to war anymore. It means that the politicians will be held accountable, like how Hillary Clinton is being held accountable for the Iraq war that she caused back then. Secondly, this is politicians will have more people under their side. Firstly, we think politicians are unrivaled under circumstances, but secondly, they are still aware of their right. It means military can still vote in election. It means they can still vote for what deals that they feel like it. And secondly, we tell you that sometimes you need money for the policy you right as a member of society. You have no money, if you have 20% of children education in school, there's no way for you to fight for your right. Sit down. So let's look at one question. Why is it a legitimate choice? This is important. We think individuals will have the right to make decisions based on the circumstances that they live in. Why? Because they know what's best for them to maximize the quality of life. This is the future. We think trade-offs happen every time in any decision that you make. Some people choose to work in mining industry even if it's harmful towards them. Some people choose to work overtime and sacrifice their happiness with their family because happiness to give and their children education is more important. Some people choose to be firefighter because their life is suffering. That's the point in which they be happy for their own life. So we think like that. So we think because trade-off is something that's going to happen in any decision that you make. The way of how we should resolve it is by giving individuals the right to make the choice at that point in time. I think that's why everything, for example, just because you work, it does not delegitimize all the sorts of choices that you make. You might choose to marry a rich guy just because you're poor, but it's completely legitimate for you to make decisions based on the circumstances that you are living in under our side. Now, secondly, because the imposition of values will make these individuals unhappy. These individuals already believe in life, and we tell them why they should be able to exercise their free will. Because we need to understand, in their world, that these individuals won't be happy even if they don't die. Even if they won't be like not dangerous situation, but they feel unhappy. Because why? Every day they feel guilty about their lives that they cannot send their children to school. Every day they feel guilty that they cannot send their children to hospital because their children are sick. These are parts of half that are as bad or like more worse than half of these individuals individuals suffer in war. We tell you sometimes these halves can be made, people can make their own trade off. If I die today, as long as I know my child will be a better person, I can send my children to education. That's completely important because the concept of life is arbitrary. Therefore, people should be able to make this kind of decision on their own. So before I move on, I will take one for Kobe.
If people are opting into the army because they think it will make them happy, won't the reality that hits them when they come home unemployed, when they don't come home at all, then be the reason as to why they can't opt out of this anyways?
Yeah, we tell you what, in the end of the day, he already did get paid off, and they thought is completely legitimate because they already foresee the benefits that they will get at the end of the day. Secondly, actually, this opening government individual. They say this is a fake happiness. Individuals ultimately are unique in this situation. We tell you that fake happiness much better than suffering that you face. We tell you even if it's a fake, even if you might believe that, oh, I might like dying is a bad thing, but I can send my children to school, and that's a good thing that individuals should get. And it's better than suffering for India for the rest of the life. And so everything is completely legitimate. Lastly, we tell you that people should be able to extract arbitrary benefit even from people should be able to derive arbitrary benefit even if the things that harms them. For example, if people find meaning in smoking, for example, or in drinking, for example, this make him or her allow him or her to exercise that right. But even if there's no tangible benefit, the benefit we still allow them to recognize that the right for people to search the meaning in life. But under these circumstances, even if there are complete benefits of applying for joint military, therefore there's more of the reason why we should allow them to join military because of the myriad of benefits that they will get. Why is it important? Because the system has been lying to them. These individuals cannot even get their rights of education, just keep lying to them anyway. So the compensation at least that we can give is by giving them autonomy to search their meaning in life by themselves. It's okay if individuals die tomorrow, as long as they know that their children can be sent to hospital, can be sent to school, and at least they know that children will not be touched or will not be victimized by the which people after he or she gets education. It's kind of fit off all humane by individuals, therefore we stand for individuals for individuals. Right. We agree some manipulation might exist under our circumstances. But we need to understand individuals situation is what manufacture their choices, and it's a continue that to make that up for them to manufacture choices based on the circumstances. For example, you might be a religious person and you make certain choices that are okay in your life. They might be a religious person and you donate your money, even if it means that you will suffer more. But it's okay as long as you find and you know that the God will just you a family will live a better life. You are happy to oppose.
Thank you very much for the speech. I go for the final speaker of the event. Yeah.
We know that there are harms of going to the military. We acknowledge all the harms, all the traumatic harms that may happen. All we are saying is that we want these harms when you enter the military to be your own choice. But when we say your own choice, we mean without the manipulation of the government. What we mean by choice is without the encouragement of the government. By the government giving a fair avenue of saying that whether you enter the military or not, it's going to be the same. We want people to enter the military regardless of what the government says, whether it's good or not. We want them to enter on their own choice and their own values. This is what is coming from side-closing opposition and closing government in today's debate, and this is what today's debate is about. In my speech today, I'm going to do a few things here. Firstly, I'm going to talk to you about the main determining factor in today's debate, which we all know is choice. Because at the end of the day, which side propagates choice is the winning side. I'm going to show you why closing opposition proves this and wins today's debate tonight. Firstly, when we talk about choice, this is such an important thing because today's motion talks about how we're actually encouraging people. So you have to understand that the government has a form of encouragement, a form of advertising of these military jobs. So then the question arises, why does the opposition want to encourage the military, which has not been answered throughout their speeches? And why we see that their side doesn't propagate choice? Because all the closing and opening the opposition were talking about is they want to increase choice. They want to increase opportunities for this education. Yes, that's exactly what we're giving to you. If you do not dictate to these people what you should do and you give them a fair avenue to choose, that is giving them choice. Without telling them, well, the military has its benefits. When you tell them that a particular job has its benefits and you want them to opt into this, you're not giving them choice. You're manipulating their minds.
how is that the true choice? We believe that under their side, they're not propagating the true choice because they allow the manipulation optimized of these poor people. And extended by my member, he's already said how these people are vulnerable to enter this for the wrong reasons. And this is detrimentally harmful to the fact that we talk about choice. But what else did my member talk to you? He talked to you about how these people actually use particular policies to try to encourage people for wrong reasons. Because my member has given you a great speech about how when we tell these people, okay, now if you join the military, you'll have more food on the table, we'll take care of you, we'll give you shelter. We're telling you this is not choice. When you tell people that there are extra benefits when you join a particular thing, you're not giving them a free mind to choose. You're giving them a mindset that, okay, if you come into here, you will be beneficial. But what is counterproductive to that is what my member talked about this veteran harm. Because we see that when they go out with all these promises, when they come back, they are not taken care of. We find it highly detrimental to the poor people and highly detrimental to the end goal of trying to get these people out of poverty. But before that, yes, opening.
You said the word choice 5 million times in your speech, but the second you take away accessible platforms, you also lower down the ability for them to make that choice because you take away easy platforms for them to actually enter this policy.
Why is it that a poor person has less avenue to enter than another person? We believe that everyone has the free avenue to enter the military on their own choices. Why are you encouraging the military? This is your question that was not answered. We are saying that now in the status quo, regardless of whether you're poor, regardless of whether rich, you can enter on your own terms. And this is what we are speaking in today's debate. But this is the main question and the main reason why opposition fails in today's debate. Because it is clear that they have to prove to us why they are prioritizing poor people to join the military. Denied. This is what they have proved to us, and they have not done that, and therefore failed their burden. But what we brought you the multiple risks of entering the military, even if you want to encourage it, because we believe that when you enter the military, there are false promises that come with this. We believe the fact that yes, the military has particular benefits, but you deny. The military has its particular benefits and has its harm. But at the end of the day, which I've repeated 5,000 times, it's about choice. But which side brings choice? We bring the side where we do not want manipulation of these people. We want a fair say of these poor people to choose on their own terms without saying that the government will provide for you this or the government will give you welfare on this only if you join the military. This is not choice. How on earth are you buying the opposition's case on choice? But this is all that the government is telling you, and all they are saying is what the government should be saying. Now, this point is highly problematic. But at the end of the day, one very important thing is because we want to talk about at the end of the day, how are we actually going to help these poor people? We can find it, yes, sir.
Every single choice a human being makes is to ensure that they are able to be happy in their life. If this is a policy that guarantees maximum satisfaction, why is that choice not legitimate?
Okay, if it really brings them happiness, let them decide what happiness is that for themselves. Let you not dictate to them what happiness is. Let you not tell them that happiness is entering the military. When you tell them that true happiness is when you enter the military, that's not giving them choice. That's manipulating their mind. We find this highly contradictory to your point on choice, and therefore we believe that side closing opposition takes today's debate. But at the end of the day, which side actually wins determines on the fact which actually helps these people to have a better life. Because from our side, we say that not only do we help these people, but we give them an open perspective to the jobs they want to enter. We give them an open perspective ahead, because we understand that poor people, the only way for them to come out is to achieve education. But by encouraging them to enter the education, it indoctrinates them to enter this military more. So at the end of the day, how are you actually trying to propagate the fact of education? If you're trying to promote education, why are you promoting them to enter the military? I find it highly contradictory on their point. But at the end of the day, why is it that side closing opposition doesn't take today's debate? Because at the end of the day, my members' 2 points still stand, because they have not rebutted on the fact how we actually say that encouraging this is actually not fair, and how these veterans actually do not get these benefits when they do come back. We are the side that have argued under both terms. We are the side that have proved you the true definition of choice and the true propagation of choice. At the end of the day, think for yourselves. Who gives choice at the end of the day? We are the ones that propagate the true meaning of choice. Don't mind repeating choice a million times. Is that what it takes? Because at the end of the day, this is the determining factor. With that, I'm proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your speech, as well for the final speaker of the debate to deliver a speech.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to talk about 3 questions in this debate. Number 1, the quality of life. Number 2, happiness of individuals. And number 3, manipulation of individuals. But before that, let me handle Mr. Choice here, right? What's happening? Mr. Choice talked about choice, and all of his house is still contingent upon going to war. That means all of his house still exists anyway. It's just a problem whether it's a legitimate or good choice or not. So, the question is, what constitutes or what is the metric used to say what is a legitimate choice, right? Because if I quantify a good choice in sending my children to education, be it I lose my legs at war, I say that that is a good choice and there is no form of manipulation existing, right? So that's the only problem they have. We think individuals on the ground are already going through a risk-benefit calculus and choosing like this choice anyway, right? So there is no form of coercion. But even if, sit down guys, even if coercion exists, we think that coercion is an abstract value that we do not like believe in. We cannot really understand why, right? I could say like this individual clearly had intentions to join the military, even if these advertisements do not exist. So even if they join and if they make that choice by themselves with no form of manipulation, then there is no harm coming from closing government. Sit down. Let's talk about the questions in this debate. Number 1, quality of life. And here's where I quote Siddhartha, right? He talked about how these individuals return from war and like the climate, the social climate is still detrimentally harmful and these individuals remain unemployed. Exactly. This shows how even throughout time, like poverty is something that can never be solved. No matter who you vote for, even if Donald Trump was president, we can never solve poverty. So what do we like? Because unemployment and poverty is one problem that can never be solved regardless because of the political scene and also how the system itself creates winners and losers in a capitalist economy, right? Sit down. The comparative is, at least in our paradigm, these individuals can derive as like some form of happiness in their life. Even if this is not a materialistic happiness, we think it's still happiness regardless, right? And that's where it leads nicely to my second question on happiness of individuals. But before that, sure, Daniel.
If people will make decisions based on circumstances, don't we improve the decisions they make when they stay in that country and demand that the circumstances improve?
Yeah, exactly. We allow individuals to make decisions based on the circumstance, and that's why we allow individuals who are poor to go mining if they think that it's good for them, even though it poses a risk to their life, right? But if you're talking about improving the system, like I said, we can never improve the system regardless of how hard we try. We think at least we can derive some form of happiness. Because even OG talked about how some individuals are very patriotic in nature, right? And they derive happiness from patriotic or contribution to society. We think that these individuals should be allowed to like exploit and expound on that form of happiness because that's the only form of happiness that they are allowed to derive, right? Because you are the one who create. This is the state that creates like policies to constantly put individuals in a circumstance where they can never fight for themselves. Sit down. But now, secondly, talking about happiness of individuals, right? We already talked to you how happiness is an abstract concept, and the state should never determine the value of happiness for individuals like uniformly, right? You cannot say to every poor person that materialism and the pursuit of wealth is happiness. We think that individuals, regardless if they stay poor and they come back to the country, they are still poor. We think they should be allowed to join the military if that means that they can feel happy towards themselves that they have contributed towards society. Sit down. Like also, they talk about how like this military involvement only creates a fake form of happiness. They will regret their decision. We think this leads to the third idea, right? Manipulation of individuals, right? We think manipulation of individuals, even if at the worst case scenario that it's a fake form of happiness, we think it's still
that putting these individuals in a circumstance where they are constantly suffering like a political climate, a social climate where they can never climb the social ladder, they can never get jobs, they can never improve their life, they can never get education for their children because the system pushes them to be in this situation, right? Okay, fine, one more.
If the system never improves, then your worst case is that people will start. Why allow these people to fight for and contribute to the very administrations that discriminate and put them in these positions?
Okay, here's the problem, right? They assume these individuals are fighting for the state. No, they are fighting for themselves. They are fighting to redeem their own beliefs that they are doing something that is good for them. Be it like they think that they are patriotic individuals and they are contributing to society, or maybe they are doing it just for the sake of getting money to send their kids to education, right? We think that because we can never measure like happiness to the most accurate, to the most accurate extent, we must allow individuals to derive happiness from their own standpoint, right? But on the idea of manipulation, we say, like I said before, we think even if it's a fake form of happiness, we think it's comparatively better because they are also manipulating these individuals. They are manipulating these individuals into believing that the pursuit of wealth is the only form of happiness that you can derive as an individual, and systematically disenfranchise these same individuals from achieving that happiness, right? So not only that they create a fake form of happiness, they systematically push these individuals from achieving that fake form of happiness. This doesn't happen under our paradigm because at the worst case scenario, even if happiness comes at the cost of their legs being torn apart, they are still happy. We would rather have these individuals smiling in their grave, feeling that they have done a good for their country and a good for their family and a good for their children, rather than let them die in the hands of a system that constantly fails.
Oh my god.
Judges will now deliberate for approximately 15 to 20 minutes, hopefully sooner. The rest